amid the rain. A group of people asked if there was anyone in that place. Then a boy appeared. The people watched him closely. They were surprised to discover someone was in that area, and asked for permission to stay there until the rain stopped. During the conversation, they kept staring at him, while he tried to understand what kind of people they were. Although he was just a child, they decided to treat him with respect. Still, they didn't seem to be bad people. With clenched fists, he stated they could stay wherever they wanted, but they should avoid the pavilion. Instead, they could use any other space. They thanked him and agreed to the condition. Their leader conveyed the message, and everyone complied, referring to the man as Patriarch. After they left, he noticed a strange symbol on their backs, which made him think they might belong to the same clan. As they departed, the boy wanted to know who they were, but he still had things to do. When he got home, he felt excited, because it was dinner time. Opening the jar, he saw several insects. He used them to feed the black tiger, a tarantula native to China capable of growing up to 20 centimeters. Because of its stripes, it resembled a tiger. Wasting no time, he offered the insect, which was quickly devoured. The spider, once the size of a fingernail, had already molted twice and grown significantly, which made him happy. Looking to the side, he opened a drawer where a lizard with body stripes was kept. In his previous life, he had struggled to acquire it due to a lack of money, but now he could obtain it easily. He extended his hand, offering food. However, the lizard bit his finger, causing him to scream in pain. He wondered if he should call that his previous life, for before being in that body, he had been a streamer with 1 million subscribers, known as a professional biologist. His main content revolved around venomous animals. The problem arose during a special celebratory live stream. He had planned to capture a rare snake for the video. That's why he went to Africa. But even there, finding it was very difficult, as it wasn't as common as a stray cat. After many attempts, he decided to rest, but his chat kept urging him to try again. While still searching, he noticed the snake coiled on his fridge. In the blink of an eye, he was bitten, which brought him to that world. This made him indignant, as he had worked so hard to find it. Suddenly, he was called by the Patriarch. Opening the door, he asked if something was wrong, but it seemed the Patriarch only wanted to thank him for the shelter and invite him to eat deer meat. Just hearing meat made him excited, as he usually only ate insects. Grateful, he followed the Patriarch, watching as the meat was cooked. The Patriarch suggested they talk while waiting. The Patriarch asked his age, and he replied that he might be 14 or 15 years old, explaining that as a child, he had hit his head and lost part of his memory. Finally, the Patriarch wanted to know if he had always lived there. He answered that he spent his time catching snakes and selling their skins, which made the Patriarch concerned. However, the boy assured him it was fine, as he already had plenty of experience with it. At that moment, an old man appeared and announced that the meat was ready. He handed the meat to the boy, who thanked him before starting to eat, feeling very pleased. While they ate, the Patriarch asked if the boy had seen anything strange in that area. The question confused him. The old man then suggested they tell the boy everything, arguing it wouldn't cause any problems, since he was alone and couldn't complicate matters. The Patriarch revealed they were searching for a centipede with a blue spot on its body. The information surprised the boy, who immediately began imagining the creature's size. He was astonished to learn that the creature was capable of swallowing someone his size. The old man reassured the boy, saying they were prepared to capture it. This led him to think they might want to raise the centipede, which made the two men laugh. They said he was funny, but explained that the centipede would be used as medicine, which left the boy even more puzzled. He believed merchants usually use centipedes to produce drugs, so he couldn't understand how it could be used as medicine. After thinking, the Patriarch explained that they needed the creature's inner core, as it was the only way to save his granddaughter. The boy became thoughtful but remained skeptical about the centipede's effectiveness as medicine. Even so, there was nothing he could do and, in a way, he felt sorry for the animal. He asked the Patriarch if he had seen that centipede, but the answer was negative. Despite this, the boy stated that he knew how to find it. He was confident in his ability, for among the millions of existing species, about 20,000 were known for their venom, and he had knowledge of each of them thanks to his centipede encyclopedia. As the pages of the book turned, he finally found the snake using his methods, which left them quite surprised, and they asked where it would be. But before that, he needed to know which areas they had searched, and they replied it was in the north and east, focusing on observing the northern river. It was quite plausible to understand why they hadn't found it. This left the two very confused, and they asked if he could explain, to which he agreed. Centipedes were cold-blooded, so they needed a territory to shelter and regulate temperature and humidity. Unlike other insects, those centipedes had a very weak outer layer and avoided waterlogged places. They needed high humidity but couldn't stay long without water, though they hated completely soaked locations. Because of this, the centipede wouldn't be in the forests or near a river. The old man was still incredulous because he believed centipedes preferred places like crevices and rotten wood. The protagonist didn't dismiss this fact, as small centipedes could be found there, but this wouldn't work because he was looking for a large centipede. Large ones couldn't remain in forests or on rocks near the river because they wouldn't have a place to hide. After an analysis, the two asked where they could possibly find the blue centipede and assured him that if they succeeded, they would reward him generously. With a smile, he stated they could find it to the west in the Rocky Mountains and pointed toward them. He explained that centipedes usually rested on those rocks. At night, the patriarch's group marched west in search of the centipede. A voice called the patriarch, saying the boy might have been wrong in his deduction. Descending from the rock, he suggested they rest for the day and ordered a flare to be fired. Thus, the flare was launched. By the campfire, they prayed that the boy was right. Another group member questioned why they hadn't been able to find the centipede. Meanwhile, the patriarch thought about his daughter, who was the Tang family's talent, and showed concern. After meeting, they both discussed the centipede and seemed to have failed to find it. He asked Waun to endure just a few more months. Reflecting on the situation, the patriarch suggested exploring the south the next day, as they hadn't found any clues so far. Suddenly, the old man connected the dots, and burst into laughter because he finally understood everything. The location had been correct all along, but the patriarch remained confused and asked if he had noticed something. The old man denied it, saying he hadn't seen any traces or signs. Even so, he had the feeling the centipede was there. Despite that, they hadn't found anything in the past 3 days, but something surprised the patriarch. The old man claimed it made sense that there was nothing because everything had either fled or fallen prey to the centipede. Placing his hand on his son's shoulder, he declared that the blue centipede was in that area and that they could finally save Waun. Before they could celebrate this discovery, the ground began to tremble. This put everyone on high alert, but before they could react, the rock above them shattered, and the blue-spotted centipede emerged, destroying everything around and putting their men on edge. The boy thought about the centipede, and it deeply fascinated him, because he knew it could easily swallow a man. He said he really wanted to see it in person. The patriarch's group finally defeated the blue centipede, and with that, they could finally save Waun. The patriarch instructed his father to take the injured to Sichuan, along with the uninjured soldiers. His father expressed concern, but the patriarch explained that disputes are engraved in blood, and favors in stone, reflecting the intensity of conflicts. With a surprised expression, his father realized he had made a mistake by only thinking about Waun, but he said they would have to welcome that boy as a guest and give him what he needed. The patriarch mentioned that he had already ordered his men to go to the village to be treated, and in the meantime, he would visit the boy. He was sure the young boy was very curious about the latest developments. The protagonist was being caressed by several centipedes, and suddenly, he had become the father of those centipedes. He explained that when he got home, he had cleaned the eggs and placed them on the bed. But when he woke up, the eggs had hatched. Thus, he became the father of those small centipedes. The boy wondered how the eggs had hatched so quickly. The centipedes felt increasingly comfortable with the boy's body, but he still wasn't very accustomed to it. Because they had hatched near him, those centipedes saw him as their father and wouldn't leave him. The previous night, the protagonist went to a cave to see that giant centipede. After all, he had to see it. As he ventured deeper into the cave, he saw a cricket and kicked it without thinking. With trembling breath, he sighed in relief. He found 3 eggs, saying he had almost failed because, if it had rained, he wouldn't have been able to retrieve even one of them. He quickly stood up, saying he had to hurry back because he needed to clean the eggs. Smiling, he told the centipedes to wait a little longer, as he was going to give them a bath. Even though he hadn't seen the blue-spotted centipede, he was quite happy to have saved the remaining eggs. Feeling a bit annoyed, he told the centipedes to give him some space. He explained that they didn't need food yet, as they would only eat after molting, but it was still inconvenient for them to cling to him. Suddenly, he had an idea, realizing that if he entered the water, they would detach from him. Smiling again, he said they were going to take a bath. The patriarch finally arrived, searching for the boy. He called out to him but received no response, so he opened the door. Upon entering, he saw various herbs and medicines, wondering if the boy was a practitioner of medicine. However, the patriarch soon realized it was disrespectful to enter someone's room without permission. He decided he would come back later, but then something began creaking. When he opened a jar, he saw a spider, and moving to the next drawer, he found a lizard. Looking around, he saw numerous insects, and found it unbelievable. After all, the boy was raising venomous animals with him. Not even the Tang Clan could do that. They could only extract venom, and they were already familiar with venomous creatures. Leaving the boy's room, he remarked that he had thought saving his daughter's life was a stroke of luck. Clenching his fists, he said the real stroke of luck might be the boy himself. The patriarch was called by the boy, who asked what had happened to his arm. He replied it was nothing too serious, but before he could say more, he noticed an energy coming from the door. and a man with bloodlust emerged from it. The patriarch quickly pushed the boy behind him and told him to run. In the blink of an eye, the man approached the patriarch and struck his arm, sending him flying far away. Lying on the ground, the patriarch realized that man was on the same level as his father, and worried about the boy. But as the smoke cleared, the young boy appeared, grabbed by the man's hands. The man mentioned that the Tang Clan was heading to Hainan, and said leaving the son of the divine sovereign injured and alone like this was humiliating. The patriarch said he didn't know the man and asked why he was attacking both him and the boy. The man pointed to his red fist, and said his name was Rakshasa, claiming it was the patriarch's father who had made him like that. The patriarch said that man had fallen off a cliff after being struck in the head, but how he survived remained a mystery. He then begged the man not to harm the boy, as he had nothing to do with them, offering his own life instead. The man refused, stating he would kill anyone associated with the Tang Clan. The patriarch found himself with no choice, as the man had no intention of letting the boy go. On the verge of fainting, he begged the man to spare the boy. Suddenly, the 3 centipedes emerged from the boy, and bit the man. The man was surprised to see the centipedes but said he didn't care, they were still fragile. As he was about to crush one, the venom took effect, causing him to collapse. Frightened, the boy wondered if the man had died, and asked the patriarch if the man was evil. This certainly surprised the patriarch, who said the boy was no mere guest. That young boy must certainly be a member of the Tang Clan. That night, the boy tended to the patriarch, who was badly injured from the fight. The patriarch thanked the boy, and he asked the patriarch to tell him where his companions were, as he needed to check on their condition. The boy realized he couldn't leave him alone because they had no way to call a doctor. But at that moment, the patriarch responded that he didn't need to worry. This made the boy wonder how he could be so calm, considering he had coughed up so much blood earlier. The patriarch stated he was fine, because he was a martial artist. The boy was surprised, and asked if martial artists could fly or throw things. The patriarch confirmed but explained that not everyone could do that. The boy thought it was all amazing since that world was truly very different. Otherwise, it would be extremely strange for a centipede of that size to exist. The patriarch thanked the boy again for saving his life and said he would formally introduce himself even in his current state. He revealed his name was Tang Chalsong of the Tang Clan. The boy then said his name was Wei Soryong. The patriarch praised the name, and commented that he had many questions for him. The boy asked him to proceed. Tang asked if those centipedes were venomous. The boy replied, confirming that those centipedes were young blue-spotted centipedes. Tang quickly stood up and asked how he had tamed those centipedes. He mentioned that he had seen various venomous creatures in the boy's room and asked if he had raised them. The boy said it was a long story, and the patriarch agreed to listen. Then the boy began explaining about the eggs. The patriarch was very surprised and asked if he had raised the creatures from the eggs. The boy confirmed because he had a basic understanding of when they would hatch. Once again, the patriarch was impressed. The boy asked the elder to wait a moment. He opened a drawer and showed Tang something. It was a striped lizard with yellow stripes on its body and some white stripes on its tail. Then he showed another lizard that was the result of crossing 2 lizards with white stripes. As a result, these had only 2 colors. The patriarch was shocked because the boy had created that color variation. Pleased, the boy asked if he thought it was beautiful. The patriarch asked if it would be possible to combine 2 venomous snakes to create an even more venomous one. The boy said it was theoretically possible, but it would be necessary to know which one had the stronger venom for it to work. This news surprised the patriarch, and he invited the boy to join his family. If he joined the Tang Clan, he would learn all martial arts techniques and have access to all types of elixirs and any venom he desired. With his skills, he could capture the legendary 10 great venomous creatures. And if that wasn't enough to convince him, he also offered one of the 3 flowers of the Central Plains, who was his daughter. The boy was astonished, but the patriarch explained that he was still young and that there was no problem making such an offer. He asked him to forget about it, and then asked if the 10 great venomous creatures of the Central Plains were as incredible as a blue-spotted centipede. The patriarch confirmed they were. He commented that the blue centipede was impressive, but compared to those creatures, it was quite inferior. From the giant scorpion to the golden toad that shone like gold, he imagined they surpassed even that. It seemed the boy was convinced. 2 days later, the patriarch's men were astonished. After all, a bloody hand appeared. The patriarch explained he was hiding and perfecting his martial arts, claiming he was very close to his father's level. The men thought he had sent that man to the realm of death and that he might have reached the realm of 10,000 venoms. They congratulated him, but the patriarch said he had achieved nothing, and clarified that the one who killed the man wasn't him, but the boy beside him. The men thanked the boy, and the patriarch clarified there had been a misunderstanding. He asked the boy to show them. The boy told them to come closer, and showed them the centipedes. The men were surprised and wondered how he had tamed the centipedes, recognizing his talent for it. The patriarch praised the boy as one of their own, but the boy replied that he needed more time to think about it. Then he commented that he should get up, as he didn't want to be late. The boy asked if the patriarch was healing something. The patriarch explained that a bloody hand practiced a martial art. He mentioned this was an art that required human blood and bone marrow. Shocked, the boy asked what kind of martial art that was. The patriarch thought that perhaps the man had left some secret scroll or disciples and that they needed to deal with everything to prevent future problems. Additionally, if someone had been captured, they would obviously have to rescue her, which the men agreed to. So, the patriarch asked if the boy wanted to help them with this, considering that he was familiar with the island's geography. The boy thought about the situation, and commented that if he joined the clan, he would have a lifelong position, but it was a rule to assess the environment before accepting. He agreed to help as soon as the patriarch recovered. The men thanked the young boy for his choice and said he had made the right decision. The boy smiled and replied that, if it was to save lives, it was clear he should help. In his thoughts, he affirmed that he would use this opportunity to discover what kind of place the Tang Clan was. After all, he believed there should always be an environmental evaluation before any commitment. After 3 days, Master Tang finally recovered, and with that, they went to a place near the academy to locate Rakshas's base. As a precaution, they asked if there were missing people. The villagers said some people disappeared each year in the jungle, but there weren't frequent disappearances. The patriarch understood the situation and thanked the villager for providing the information. With that, they departed. But unfortunately, they didn't find anything significant. While walking through the forest, the boy asked if there was anything special about that village. The patriarch said he thought they were in that location because they had revealed themselves when they were found, but it wouldn't be easy to detect. He found it all strange, as it was impossible not to find even a trace. Once again, he remembered the bloody hand, and with that, had an idea, and asked the patriarch if he remembered what that man had said when he appeared, but it seemed he didn't. With that, the boy said the man had mentioned hearing they were heading to Hainan. So obviously, someone had informed him they were going to Hainan. The protagonist suggested they should check the places the Tang Clan visited in Hainan, and, if they carried a portrait of the man, they could find him. This left the patriarch quite surprised, saying it was incredible. After all, if Rakshasa said that, he must have heard it from someone who saw them. Thanks to the boy's idea, they decided to depart immediately. The scene changed, and they were heading to the location. One of the patriarch's men said that place was the village but mentioned there was a strange disease spreading. The patriarch said they should go to the village, and according to the boy, those people wouldn't be hostile to them. Upon arriving, there were 2 people who looked clearly exhausted. The patriarch's group asked if there was anyone in that place. They heard a voice asking why they were there, and then 4 people appeared. The patriarch quickly introduced himself, and explained the reason for their visit. The boy simply watched, and he noticed that the village seemed lifeless, and that one child looked very weak. The boy found it all strange, wondering what had happened to the people in that village, and it seemed they had taken some kind of medicine. The old man said no one was missing from there, nor was anything happening in their village, and told them to leave. The patriarch said he didn't believe that. After all, there were more houses than people. The old man said it was none of their concern and again told them to leave. The boy was clearly uneasy, and the patriarch asked what was happening. After all, the boy had said the people would be friendly to them, but the boy was equally confused. Suddenly, the child named Mijin fainted, and the old man showed concern for the girl, as she was his only remaining relative. But she was very ill. The patriarch asked if he could help using his medical arts. The old man asked if it was the medical arts of the Central Plains, and the patriarch confirmed, saying that, although he wasn't a doctor, he still had basic knowledge of medicine and asked if he could see the child. The old man allowed it. He admitted, in fact, there was a plague spreading through the village, causing children to die and healthy people to suffer. The patriarch understood and said he would try. The old man asked them to bring her inside, and the patriarch and his group followed. With that, they rushed, and the boy asked if the elder also knew about medical arts. He explained that the Tang Clan's martial arts, tied to the use of poisons, also developed proficiency in medicine, as they required a deep understanding of the body. The boy thought the Tang Clan was a group of assassins who used poison, but he desired to join to learn the medical arts. The man also said that sometimes they injected poison into wicked people to observe their reactions, shocking the boy, as it was human experimentation. The boy said it was to be expected. After all, those people were quite frightening. Standing before the door, they finally entered and laid the child down. The patriarch explained that he had transferred some of his internal chi and also stabilized her breathing. The old man thanked him once again for everything, and prayed that they could save his only granddaughter. But there seemed to be something strange about her pulse. The patriarch asked if she had a weak heart since birth. The old man explained that it had been 6 months since she started to get sick, and others in the village also began to fall ill, which was why they called it a mysterious disease. Because of this, he had asked them to turn back at the village entrance earlier. The patriarch said he would give a good heart remedy and asked if he could gather the villagers so they could try it. Tearing up, the old man thanked him, and the patriarch felt relieved. The boy observed everything. That night, one of the patriarch's men said he had worked hard taking care of the villagers, and asked what symptoms they had. The patriarch explained they were quite bizarre: lethargy, swollen eyes, mild fever, and irregular pulses. The symptoms were all different, and perhaps the problem lay in their hearts. The man asked where the boy was. The boy, exhausted, had fallen asleep, and the patriarch had left him in his room. He said the boy had followed them without knowing anything about martial arts, so it was normal for him to be tired. He added that the boy had worked a lot. The patriarch said he would go check on the boy, and the man offered to take him. Opening the door, they found the boy sleeping alongside his 3 centipedes. The patriarch looked at him and, stepping into the room, moved toward the boy, and slapped him on the face. The boy was confused, and asked what had happened to the patriarch. Indignant, he continued to stare at the patriarch, touching his cheek with his hand. He grew angry, and asked why he had done that, saying it hurt a lot. But the patriarch explained that there was an insect on his face, and he was just trying to catch it. Still, the protagonist was confused. The patriarch said he wanted to check on him before sleeping. However, at that moment, an insect had landed on his face while he was asleep, and since there were many venomous insects in that place, he thought it was dangerous to leave it there and instinctively acted. Showing his hand, he explained that the insect was large. The protagonist wondered why that insect was there. At that moment, he realized something. He said the patients suffered from various diseases, but they all had one thing in common: cardiac arrhythmia. However, he stated that the reason for the disease spreading in the village was precisely because of that insect, which clearly left the patriarch quite surprised. The kissing bug, a species from the Reduvidi family, earned its name for sucking blood near the eyes and lips. They are quieter than mosquitoes and, because of that, are also called vampires or assassin bugs. The protagonist explained that these insects weren't venomous, but their stomachs were full of harmful parasites. When they bit people, the infection occurred through their feces. They caused trypanosomiasis, more commonly known as Chagas disease, and were ranked 7th among the deadliest animals to humans. The boy asked the old man if the village dogs exhibited the same symptoms as the humans, and the old man confirmed, wondering if the insect caused that too. The protagonist confirmed, saying he was almost certain. The old man asked if he could save his granddaughter. The boy said it would be possible if they had the right medicine. The patriarch chuckled softly. When questioned about the boy, the man confirmed he saw value in him, while the protagonist took the opportunity to ask if there was any issue. The patriarch said they were from the Tang family of Sichuan, but this clearly confused the boy, as he already knew that. The patriarch explained that there was something called gu, which some associated with parasites or sorcery, but in reality, were insects raised by evil men in China. They used these insects to cause pain or make people do their bidding. The protagonist found the idea of controlling people interesting, which the patriarch agreed with. However, countless martial artists like him had perished because of these gu. Some were forced to kill their own children, betray their families, or become slaves to those men. In the background, the old man lamented about his son. Because of this, many sought an antidote to counter the gu. To do so, they needed medicines that could either expel the gu from the body or dissolve them, which would kill them from within. This left the protagonist speechless. The patriarch said that if anyone could create the cure, it would obviously be the Tang family of Sichuan. According to him, they could handle such things easily, and that little insect would be no problem for them. He showed an orb capable of dissolving curses. The protagonist, surprised, commented that the object had an elegant name, despite being just an antiparasitic medicine. The patriarch told the old man not to worry, as they would be able to save his granddaughter. The scene shifted, showing the villagers slowly recovering, and the old man's granddaughter was already well. The villagers' hospitality was an extra reward, and seeing their cheerful expressions, he concluded that the rumors about his optimistic personality were true. The patriarch affirmed, saying it was thanks to the boy they succeeded. It was he who discovered the cause, and therefore, the gratitude belonged to him, not the patriarch. The village warmly thanked the boy, calling him the savior of their village. The protagonist said it was the Tang family's medicine that cured the villagers, but they gave the credit to him. Seeing him receive all the thanks seemed to make the patriarch even more satisfied than the boy himself, though he wasn't the one being thanked. And, to be honest with himself, the boy admitted he was also touched by the scene. The villagers tossed the boy into the air in celebration. Some time later, the old man asked the patriarch about what he had mentioned earlier at the village entrance, and the patriarch asked what it was. He inquired if he remembered searching for the missing villagers. The patriarch confirmed he did. The old man said he wanted to repay the favor as much as possible, and had investigated the case, which led him to hear a strange story. Among the village women, one who came from another village shared that, years ago, her native village suffered a tragedy where several people disappeared. In his thoughts, the patriarch realized they had found them, and he quickly asked where that village was. The old man replied it was a small village to the west. The scene shifted again, showing the patriarch's group heading there. At that moment, the stench of bodies filled the air, and one of his men confirmed it was indeed the place. The patriarch expressed a deeply surprised reaction, calling it horrifying. The air was filled with venom. A man told the boy not to look, but the boy said he had already seen everything. Suddenly, someone asked what it was. At that moment, a claw appeared, and using its beak, grabbed the head of a snake. It was a bird. Grabbing a stone, the boy said he couldn't let that creature disrespect the dead any further. Quickly, he hurled the stone at it. The stone hit near the bird, which dodged in response. Planting its claw back on the ground, the bird stared at the group. One of the men was clearly irritated, but the patriarch placed a hand on his shoulder, saying something was wrong. Suddenly, the bird flew up and displayed an intense aura. The boy became very concerned about this. Looking around, he noticed the skulls melting. The patriarch covered the boy's mouth and told everyone to run, as the beast was a Zhenniao, a poisonous feathered bird. Once they finally escaped, the patriarch explained that when it spread its wings, it appeared to be 1.6 meters wide. Its beak was sharp, and its body was covered in purple feathers. When enraged, it spread its wings, and everything around it began to darken and decay slowly, releasing venom. On the bird's head was a golden crown, giving it a majestic presence. It was also called Jin or Zhenniao. In shock, the protagonist asked if it was one of the great venomous creatures. The patriarch confirmed, saying it ranked at the top of the 10 great venomous creatures. It was indeed called Zhenniao. The protagonist was awestruck by it. In his thoughts, the protagonist noted that even Earth's venomous insects and snakes seemed adorable in comparison. The patriarch explained that the bird was likely attracted by venomous snakes, as Zhenniao only ate the heads of venomous snakes. The boy asked if that was common, but the great patriarch said it was extremely rare to witness. The protagonist was astonished by this news. At that moment, the protagonist asked if they could capture it. This left everyone in shock. The patriarch asked if he really wanted to try, and the boy said yes, but the venom was likely lethal. The patriarch looked at the boy and said there was a way to achieve the goal. This surprises the protagonist. The patriarch explained that if he mastered the Tang Clan's poison techniques, he would become immune to all poisons, including that of the Zhenniao. However, the patriarch added that they could not teach their techniques to an outsider. Even as the patriarch, he could not break the rules. The protagonist asked if he could learn them if he became part of the family, and whether it would truly make him immune to all kinds of poison, even the Zhenniaos. The patriarch affirmed everything he had said. If the protagonist decided now, he would teach him immediately without hesitation. But, of course, the boy would need to give him a gift as well. With a smile on his face, the patriarch said that if the boy took too long to decide, he too would need time to think. This left the protagonist with no choice. As a new member of the clan, he eagerly awaited the patriarch's guidance, which brought a smile to the patriarch's face. The patriarch declared that from that moment onward, the boy was part of their family. The scene shifted. There were traces of the bloody hand. At that moment, someone called the patriarch. Holding a notebook, they said they had found it in the cave. The patriarch looked at the blood-stained writing. It was unmistakably the bloody hand's secret technique. The protagonist was in shock. Stowing the book away, the patriarch said they should return. But the protagonist questioned why. The patriarch replied they should head back immediately, as they had secured the blue centipede's core and the secret manual. The boy asked if they could pass by the temple since he wanted to free his friends. The patriarch understood completely, saying he also needed to gather his belongings. As they departed, the protagonist noticed something. He said there was something there and pointed ahead. As they approached, they saw it was one of the bird's feathers. It radiated a strong aura. The patriarch picked it up. He said it would be a commemorative gift for the boy, marking his entry into the family. The protagonist seemed deeply moved by it, and expressed his gratitude. The patriarch mentioned he didn't particularly like how the boy addressed him, and said they would change his title after the ceremony. This left the boy rather confused. Meanwhile, at the Tang Clan, the great patriarch finally arrived. He wondered where Wayne was. They hurried to reach her. When they opened the door, the great patriarch announced he had brought her medicine. He showed the box containing the spotted centipede. One of his daughters burst into tears, saying he had succeeded. The elder took the core and, still slightly worried, looked at Wayne's face. The great patriarch said it had been close, expressing relief at having rushed back in time. He placed the core into the girl's body. Mana emanated from her. The great patriarch held her hand and began performing some kind of technique on her. At that moment, they hoped she would open her eyes. Calling her name, they waited. In another scene, the protagonist was being carried on someone's back. The protagonist remarked that he already knew the Central Plains were vast but hadn't expected them to be so immense. From Hainan, they took a boat to Hongou, then passed through Nanjing, enduring a journey of over a month and a half. Finally, they arrived in Sichuan. Looking at the gate, He exclaimed that it was the Tang Clan. The protagonist was amazed by the place. As they walked, he remarked that the entire mountain belonged to the Tang Clan, which was why it was called Tang Clan Mountain. Suddenly, many people appeared, exclaiming that the patriarch had returned. The protagonist was confused. He noted how many people there were, wondering if all of them were part of the Tang Clan. Amidst the crowd, a girl dressed in red appeared. She ran straight to her father. The protagonist watched her in awe. Meanwhile, her father said she was alive. She apologized to her father, embracing him tightly. The boy just watched, wondering if she truly looked like that. He remarked that in his past life, he had dated a celebrity, but he had never seen anyone with such a radiant aura before. The patriarch told the boy there was someone he wanted to introduce to him. He said it was his daughter, the one he had referred to as the flower. The girl blushed deeply. The patriarch revealed that she was the flower he had ignored. The two stared at each other. At that moment, the protagonist remembered everything. In another scene, we were shown the only daughter of the Tang Clan, the poisonous flower, Tang Huayin. She bore a burden no one knew about. While hiding, she overheard the adults' conversation, where they doubted her talent but said her appearance made up for it. The old man said it would be good to find a suitable son-in-law, but he had already suggested to the patriarch to take a second wife, though he was against the idea. Meanwhile, the girl said her parents were not wrong. Tang Huayin wanted to prove this to the clan elders. After achieving great feats in her family's martial arts, she wanted to prove that she could do much more for the family, despite not being a man. But as the saying goes, haste makes waste, and if you are impatient, you will inevitably lose your way, and it was this impatience that resulted in an inner demon. Because of this, that inner demon led to a chi disorder. At that moment, the girl opened her eyes, noticing she was surrounded by several people. Her mother was very happy to see her safe, tears falling from her eyes. She apologized to her mother, and said she only wanted to be someone useful to the clan. The girl said she had lost all her internal chi, but her grandfather called her, asking if she was doing this out of guilt. However, he told her she had not yet reached the level of the 100 poisons she desired. Therefore, she should stop crying and cheer up. When she looked at her hand, an energy flowed into it. The girl asked what that was, and her grandfather said there was something he needed to tell her. Then he told the story of a young warrior who saved her and also granted her the internal chi of 1,000 poisons, not just 100 poisons. The girl looked at him, and a rather strange atmosphere arose between the two. In his thoughts, he said he should think more about what he said. After all, he had called his own daughter a weed because of this. Putting that aside, he introduced himself to her, and said his name, Wei Soryong. He said he had heard she was ill, but now she seemed quite healthy. She said she was called the poisonous flower. Tang Huayin thanked him for saving her life and said she would never forget it for the rest of her life. Meanwhile, the protagonist was amazed by her beauty. Suddenly, a voice arose in the boy's head. It was the patriarch's voice, asking what he thought of all that, asking if he thought she was thin enough or if she was too beautiful, and asking if he would like to get to know her better, which, of course, left the protagonist blushing and flustered. While sitting in the sauna with his 3 centipedes, he reflected on everything that had happened and wished he could die. Looking to the side, he glanced at his centipedes, and said that they normally didn't leave his body, but when he asked them to enter the bucket, they obeyed, which was quite mysterious. It was as if they could understand him, and as Mr. Goose said, it seemed they reacted to killing intent. He said it was embarrassing for them to keep staring at his naked body like that, so they quickly went under. And the protagonist just thought it was all wonderful. He said that Mr. Gu had told him those centipedes were spiritual creatures, so he thought he should ask about them later. While looking up, he said he couldn't calm down because of what the patriarch had said. We cut to another scene, where the 4 of them were in the room. The patriarch said he would give the boy a room. His father asked if the boy was that talented, and he confirmed they had met by chance, but his help was very good. He commented that the young man's knowledge was impressive, and he had also killed the blood hand. Moreover, he had found one of the legendary spiritual creatures, and on top of that he had hatched the eggs of the blue-stained centipede on his own. This, of course, surprised the two. His father said he could never have imagined they would be able to find such a treasure. Then the patriarch called his daughter, and said he wanted to make that young warrior her husband, asking what she thought. As she reflected on it, there was silence in the room. She thought that she wanted to be more useful to her clan. After all, she had just acquired the constitution beyond the 100 poisons. She said she was also part of the Tang Clan, and knew very well what her father meant. But nonetheless, if that man really deserved her, she would find out herself. With that, she stood up and left the room, leaving everyone restless. The patriarch told the young warrior to be careful, and, as beautiful as that rose might be, it also had sharp thorns. As she ran, she said that, finally, she had acquired the constitution of 1,000 poisons, and if she appeared, the elders would never recognize her. She said she would thoroughly examine the person, from their qualifications to their personality. While the protagonist was sitting and wondering what he should do, he said that the girl probably held a grudge against him. He asked the centipedes what he should do. Suddenly, coming from behind, the girl called out to him. The girl was looking at him intently. She asked for forgiveness, and said she was in a hurry, asking him to give her his hand. Thinking for a moment, he said it would be better for them to get to know each other first. After all, everything had an order. The girl wondered what he was talking about, but then she realized. She said that wasn't what she meant and told him he had misunderstood everything. This left the protagonist disappointed. As the air between them grew tense, she sighed and said it wasn't what he was thinking. After all, she only wanted to check his pulse. He had misunderstood completely. He understood the situation and said he hadn't realized that. She sat beside him and apologized again. After all, she had appeared out of nowhere and acted rudely. The girl said he was young, so she would explain what was happening. Then she began to tell the young man. He said the story he had heard sounded like the plot of a typical medieval tale. As the only direct descendant, she faced schemes from the secondary families. To secure the lineage, the elders planned to bring in a capable son-in-law. The girl apologized to him once again, but said she had something to confirm with him. And even if things didn't go well, she had no intention of treating him poorly. So, she suggested an oath. The protagonist extended his hand and said he understood what she meant. She could feel free to confirm whatever she needed. Looking at him, she touched his hand and said she would begin. After a while, an aura emerged from her. She explained that the Tang Clan's martial arts were not for everyone and that their poison techniques required adaptation to toxins as internal energy grew. Only by assimilating them all could one achieve mastery. With that, she concluded. She said that, fortunately, his body was capable of learning poison techniques. However, his body was a body of 10 poisons. This meant he could only handle 10 types of toxins. She said that, overall, his abilities would place him only at the level of a first-class martial artist, and that would be the maximum someone without talent could achieve. Then, she apologized once more and said she would take her leave. As she left, he felt sad about the news of having a body of 10 poisons. After all, it meant he wouldn't be able to capture greatness, and for him, that was a very serious issue. The scene shifted to the girl taking a bath. She mentioned that her body was emitting a strange smell since she consumed the blue centipede's inner core. And despite bathing several times, the smell persisted. She wondered if it was some kind of punishment for speaking ungratefully to the one who saved her life. While sleeping, the girl deeply thanked his kindness. However, the protagonist was very confused. After all, he was dreaming, but she said he wasn't. She explained that she had borrowed the girl's appearance so as not to scare him. She said she was the mother of those centipedes, which left him very confused. And the 3 children clung to his foot. As he looked at them, he noticed that all of them were girls. Then he asked how she had appeared in his dream. She explained that she had been mercilessly killed, leaving her children behind. But her grudge reached the heavens, and because of that, her spirit remained in the inner core. While she cursed the body of the girl who consumed her core, an opportunity arose to resolve her grudge. She was able to enter his dream, all thanks to him. After all, he had brought her children with him. He understood and realized that, in the end, it was he who revealed her location. It wasn't his intention, but he ended up being involved in the death of the centipedes. The girl closed her eyes and asked if she could make a request, as long as it wouldn't trouble him. He says yes and promises to fulfill any request she has. She asks him to take care of her babies until they are fully grown. He is confused, as centipedes become independent after shedding their skin. She explains that this only applies to lower creatures. However, her kind is different, and until her descendants shed their skin, they would remain dependent on what flows within the mother's inner core. This leaves the protagonist even more confused. After all, that girl had already consumed her inner core. She mentions that she had cursed that girl, and because of her inner core, the girl's body would emit an unpleasant odor. She explains that this was to ensure the girl wouldn't get close to any man, preventing her from having children. Meanwhile, he found the whole situation very strange. She offers to lift the curse in exchange, allowing her children to absorb the girl's internal chi. Might even help him win her heart. He thinks for a moment, but says that doesn't feel right to him. After all, he would never betray the will of a defenseless girl like that. She understands his perspective and realizes that he is indeed a noble person, but then she asks how he plans to overcome this challenge. After all, that girl is quite difficult, and she couldn't exactly retrieve the inner core for him, as it had already been absorbed by the girl. Upon hearing this, he gets an idea. Looking at the centipede, he says to leave everything to him. After all, he thinks this could all work out. The next day, he explains everything to the girl. She is very surprised to realize that the odor came from her own body, because of the centipede's inner core. He confirms this and explains that if she attached the centipede to her body and let it absorb the energy, the odor would naturally disappear. The girl hesitates and asks, though feeling uncomfortable, if it's okay for him to help without asking for anything in return. After all, he could easily be rewarded for it. He smiles and says he would never take advantage of a woman's situation to do that, refusing to be dishonest. The girl responds that, in that case, she cannot continue to accept his kindness without offering anything in return. She then says she will seriously consider her father's words. Looking at him, she realizes there are things more valuable than talent or martial prowess. Speaking of that, the protagonist ponders for a moment. He mentions that she said his body could only absorb 10 poisons, which she confirms. He then states that he wants to fill it with the toxins of the 10 greatest poisonous creatures. This clearly surprises her. After all, he wants to become stronger for her, which makes her blush deeply. For one of the 10 flowers of Mirim, this is the first time a man has made such a bold confession to her. After looking at each other, she asks if he knows what he just said. He replies that he thinks not. However, she explains that this path is incredibly difficult and challenging and would probably take years. He is shocked to learn it would take so long. The girl covers her face, as she is very flustered. She emphasizes that he is only 15 years old and that, after 3 years, he would reach the age of marriage. She adds that if he manages to handle at least one of the 10 great poisonous creatures, she would be convinced. Blushing, she says that if he succeeds, there will definitely be a possibility for him to marry her, and that, in any case, she will be rooting for him. Then, she quickly leaves. But before that, he calls her back. The boy suggests she keep the creatures now and proposes she stay for just a few more hours. She returns, still slightly blushing. He reassures her not to worry too much. After all, they don't bite. Calling out to his little ones, he tells them to go to their mother. This leaves her very confused, but he clarifies that this was not his intention. Meanwhile, in the hall, the three were discussing the young warrior, as it seemed he might not be able to win the girl's heart. The great patriarch asks if she thinks anything is happening between the two, as he had seen them together, but she replies that the young warrior was rejected by the girl. They continue pondering the situation. The great patriarch concludes that forcing a marriage would not be the right thing to do and that it would be better to let the two develop feelings for each other naturally. The woman suggests letting Hwayne take care of his martial arts training so they can spend time together and grow closer. They should find out if the wise elder healer could grant the purifying marrow and essence elixir. The son says that wouldn't be possible since not even Hwayne was able to obtain it. He sighs and agrees that it's true. Suddenly, Hwayne arrives. They ask what brings her at this hour. She asks to come in. The girl feels embarrassed. She notices the three of them are still in the room. She says she has something to tell them. Blushing, she says she will do as her father suggested. This surprises him. He asks what she means, as he doesn't even remember what he said. Meanwhile, the woman, curious, asks how the young warrior managed to capture her interest. The girl is still uneasy. She is so embarrassed that she can barely speak, which only makes the patriarch more curious, as he thought she didn't consider the young warrior to her liking. Shyly, she says that the young warrior told her he would become the greatest in the world for her and promised to do so, leaving them all very surprised. Curious, the patriarch asks her to elaborate. She explains that although his innate talent is only at the level of 10 poisons, he promised to make up for it by defeating 10 great poisonous creatures for her. The great patriarch says it's bold of him to make such a claim, and the woman beside him comments that he is quite a rare suitor. Although her heart is willing, she says she would only agree to the marriage if he can capture one of the 10 great poisonous creatures before reaching adulthood. She wonders if he understood this. Her father remarks that she should have asked for at least 3 creatures. After all, that would be the minimum to win her hand. The girl asks if she should explain this to the boy more clearly, but she decides there's no need. The elder says they should treat him as a future son-in-law but act as if they're undecided. And naturally, he will become part of the family. Switching scenes, the centipede grasps the protagonist's hand. After all, he had won the young lady's heart. He says it was thanks to his courage and perseverance. Smiling, she says today will be her last day, as her resentment has been resolved, and her soul will soon ascend. The boy understands. The centipede asks if he has any final requests, saying she will grant anything he asks. After thinking for a moment, he says he would like to see her body. A little embarrassed, she accepts his request. Revealing her shoulder, she mentions he has a weakness for lust. Confused, the protagonist asks if she should really reveal that. The centipede wonders why he wants this or if perhaps he would prefer to see something else, but he clarifies that's not the case. He says he actually wants to see her centipede form. This obviously confuses the centipede. She says there's no problem if that's the case. A smoke bomb goes off. With that, the centipede appears. She asks if this is enough for him. Emotional, he says it's enormous. She asks if he would like to touch her. The protagonist then asks if it's waterproof, and wonders how something so large supports its joints. He notices that as the centipede moves, her front legs step forward, and he asks if he can touch her legs. He asks how strong her venom is and how she sees, if perhaps she uses her antennae to perceive things. At that moment, he says he really wants to touch her fangs, though he knows it's dangerous. However, he reminds her that she promised to grant any request. The centipede wonders what he's talking about and thinks to herself whether her daughters will truly be okay. After all, the boy's touch is anything but ordinary. In the hall, the patriarch calls for the boy. He says he heard everything from Huayin and that from now on, he will be treated as their son-in-law. The protagonist is confused, but the patriarch explains that the marriage will naturally happen when he reaches adulthood. However, this isn't the main concern for the protagonist. Smiling, the woman beside the great patriarch says she will be his mother-in-law, and the elder adds that Huayin's marriage has already been decided. The protagonist looks at Huayin, who is smiling. All of this leaves the boy quite confused, as there are usually conditions for marriage. He says he should go along with it for now and hopes to count on everyone's guidance in the room. Looking around, everything seems to be going as planned. At that moment, the patriarch says that before learning the Tang Clan's poisonous arts, there's something the boy must see first, and the protagonist asks what it is. The two smile. Saying it was the Hall of 10,000 Poisons, he assured him it would be something he would absolutely love. As they walked, he mentioned that everyone had been waiting for this moment. The great patriarch explained that taking the first steps into the Hall of 10,000 Poisons was a precious tradition for the family, which made the protagonist very excited, as it was a place where 10,000 types of poisons were gathered. For a moment, the boy looked at Huayin, and she looked stunning, leaving the protagonist in awe. He commented that such beauty was best admired from the side, like a live photo shoot. His in-laws expressed joy at seeing their future son-in-law's face. The patriarch noticed he was staring at her too much. He remarked that the boy was still distractedly gazing at Huayin, seemingly enchanted by her. They reminded him to watch where he was walking. After a while, they arrived at the Hall of 10,000 Poisons, where someone was waiting for them, along with 2 guards. The guards quickly welcomed the great patriarch. He instructed them to open the gates, while the protagonist commented that the security in that place was quite rigorous, despite resembling something from the medieval era. The man ordered the gates to be opened, and the 2 guards began opening them immediately. After much effort, the man noted they were opening the gate faster than usual. He told them to proceed. The protagonist was left speechless by everything he saw. The great patriarch explained that the gates were made of iron and forged with Kunyu steel, and even opening them was considered a great honor. He then announced that they had finally arrived. As they entered, the elder explained that this was the Tang Clan's treasure, where they stored all their poisons. The great patriarch introduced the Hall of 10,000 Poisons, also known as the Chamber of 10,000 Poisons, to the boy, advising him to be cautious and not touch anything recklessly. The protagonist agreed, acknowledging that the poisons were well maintained, categorized as paralysis poisons, sleep poisons, and so on. His father-in-law asked Huayin to explain things to him, suggesting he would enjoy it much more hearing it from her. Blushing, she accepted her father's request. She took the boy's arm and said she would show him the strongest poisons of the Tang Clan first. Huayin explained that the poison they were dealing with was the Qi Dissolver, one of the most feared by martial artists. A poison that drains a person's internal energy. She added that while all of them were potent, the strongest poison of the Tang Clan was something entirely different. Then, she dropped a seed into the boy's hand. He asked if that was a bean and noted it resembled a tiger bean. The girl explained that, apart from the poisons of the 10 great poisonous creatures, this was the strongest poison that existed. It was a plant that symbolized the Tang Clan, the castor plant seed. The protagonist realized it was ricin, a seed containing a highly potent toxin, with just 2 milligrams being lethal to an adult, a poison stronger than cyanide. Huayin affirmed that this poison was closer to the Tang Clan's ideal, colorless, painless, tasteless, and shapeless, the golden poison. When used to kill someone, it was called the golden death. The girl explained that the strongest poison wasn't the one that caused a horrible death but the one that killed silently, leaving no trace. She further explained that the Sichuan Tang Clan's poison arts followed this ideal as well, discreet and precise. The protagonist realized this was a clan of assassins. Coming from behind, his father-in-law said that was enough for now, and suggested they check out the poisonous beasts. The boy asked if there were poisonous beasts in that place. He confirmed and said he could even supervise them. He emphasized that the clan would provide all the necessary support. The protagonist was delighted by this, feeling as though they were fully supporting his hobby. Suddenly, a voice interrupted, telling the patriarch that he needed to leave immediately. They asked what had happened. He explained that they needed to go to the Black Tortoise Pavilion immediately due to the elders of the clan. The elder questioned what the elders were planning. The man said there were 2 problems. The first was about the medicine they had sent to the lord of the city of Sichuan, as it did not have the desired effect, and he had sent them a letter full of complaints. The second issue was about the Hall of 10,000 Poisons, and apparently, rumors were already spreading. His father-in-law told him to come with them. With that, they went to the Black Tortoise Pavilion. There, the elders called the patriarch, and asked what he was thinking after making a critical decision on his own. They questioned how he could choose an orphan to marry Huayin. Annoyed, he asked what they were talking about, and whether they were insulting his son-in-law. The two elders quickly softened their tone. He said he had made that decision himself, and asked if they had any issues with it. However, they asked the great patriarch to use some common sense, pointing out that entrusting the management of the Hall of 10,000 Poisons to a boy without proven skills was absurd. Huayin looked at the boy, silently apologizing for the situation. He sighed and said it wasn't her who needed to apologize. At that moment, he excused himself for interrupting their conversation, but suggested that since the problem arose from his perceived lack of ability, he could demonstrate his skills to the elders, thus proving his value to them. This surprised them greatly. The protagonist suggested, for instance, that he could resolve the issue with the lord of the city of Sichuan. Huayin asked what the boy was planning to do. The protagonist said that he wasn't usually the type to stand out or cause a commotion, but if someone disturbed his peaceful life as a pet owner, he wouldn't simply let it go. Our video ends here. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, bye bye.